All right.
You gave us a quick rundown of the EKS session.
Yeah.
So let's do that again.
EKS, multi-tenant EKS, they gave a session there. It's on GitHub, and they're doing it using namespaces. And we argued that you really should just use separate clusters because you get so much more security out of the box than having to build network policies and deal with all the faff. And what was funny about the presentation I didn't mention earlier is that in the slide, they're using the Nginx ingress across multiple namespaces, which they think they've multi-tenanted. And yet a month ago, a vulnerability came out that you could create an ingress that gave you all secrets in the cluster and screwed up your multi-tenant. So
yeah, and we actually wrote an article on that, and we created Chekhov rules specifically to defend against people abusing or having Nginx deployed as an ingress in your cluster in a way that could be abused by your end users to get into namespaces and things they are not meant to access. So interesting example of it might be secure now, but how can you be sure it's going to be secure when you're using that cluster and this service in a week's time or a month's time?
Yeah, it's funny that vulnerability really made me dive into the Nginx ingress a lot. And I just felt like the whole design looked sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we did that. And then you were going to tell us about the Graviton and how they were using speculative, or you think they're using speculative.
Yeah. So Steve was running through. Wouldn't it be great if we could find, by the way, a service online that we could give the muted video to and lip read and then gave subtitles for the bit that we missed?
That'd be good.
Do you think that exists? We should find out.
Maybe Amazon will announce it as a service
Maybe
tomorrow.
Amazon will announce that as a service tomorrow. Yeah, so you were running through things that you found really interesting from the keynote. And you said, obviously, there was the really cool 5G stuff that they will do their own. They will ship you all the equipment needed to do like small cell 5G for your environment or concert hall or whatever. And we kind of were talking about how the hell are they doing that without like millions of dollars of per event, per rigger FCC licenses for like using those frequencies. So personally, I'm going to go and find that out because that's insane. But then you were talking about kind of the regular announcements like Graviton and those. And I saw the deep dive today for the Graviton 3 announcement, and they were saying that instead of going higher clock cycles because power consumption, heat dissipation, it's just not efficient for them to do that, they've increased the amount of kind of simultaneous execution. They've increased the execution kind of bus width to allow more execution to happen at once. And I was worried that maybe that means they're doing speculative execution. And for those of you familiar, like Spectre and all those kind of attacks recently against the Intel processors, speculative execution is what's allowed people to have JavaScript running in a browser that's managing to read bits of data from like the encrypted section of a different OS on that hypervisor by like access to caches and timing attacks and things like that. So if we're now seeing Graviton having that kind of speculative stuff, are we going to see attacks of that nature against these new processors with that same design? Or is it limited to, yes, we can run more things at once, but it's always one instruction at a time per user VM, and therefore we can just get more VMs scheduled per instruction or something like that?
There's clearly no relationship between these instructions.
Yeah,
because of the sheer scale of what they're doing.
Because they're Amazon, right? And they have their own hardware memory mod. What's it called? Oh, that's going to annoy me. Nitro, is it? The on-chip virtualization chip that they have that like literally manages like PCI and mapping to EBS volumes and like does all the crazy virtualization stuff that they do at scale. So maybe it's sensible.
It makes sense. So the stats on the Graviton were 25% faster overall, 2 times faster for floating point, 3 times faster for ML operations, and then the mystery, using 60% less power.
Right.
Well done.
Well,
yeah. Clap, clap, clap on that.
Well done, Amazon. Going back to the 5G thing, like that is the kind of project that when I was in networking, the ability for someone to go, sure, create a business unit, hire people that understand how you build and deploy 5G networks, which are usually a very clunky, very large, very, not consumer friendly thing, and cloud manage and productize that in a way that we can do it reliably for the end user. Like, what an opportunity. Like, is there any company other than Amazon that is allowing teams to just go, yeah, we could probably do that? Like the UX of that, taking something that is usually cabinets and racks and network engineers thinking about it all day and night and making it so it's just plug and play is kind of insane. Because they're also in the Wi-Fi space now, right?
Yeah.
They also do the home Wi-Fi with the mesh networks. It's interesting that they've realized that with all these tools and with all this cloud and all this capacity, they have a perfect always online endpoint to start doing really cool things that are hard to do when you don't have something to call back home to. Like they started it with Alexa, and they're now moving into just more specialized industry. You got the IoT and now 5G and now Wi-Fi. Like it's crazy that they're moving into the more physical space.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's amazing actually.
Yeah, I'm like those. It's weird. Like the things that always excite me on the announcements for the keynotes are always the things that aren't related to running stuff for work in the cloud.
Don't seem very cloudy.
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
what?
Cloud managed hardware is cool.
So I'm going to skip the one that I liked, which was, where is it? So actually, you'll probably like the did you see the IoT Twin Maker?
I did.
Yeah, what'd you think of it? You're being an IoT geek.
I probably not the right person to ask because I struggle with a lot of the IoT services. They never, in my experience, do what they promise to do. They are always just pieces that require a hell of a lot of per project hackery to make them work.
Yeah, well, that's like if you watched AWS Community Summit, which will be live Thursday between 2 and 5 p.m. UK time, we have sent them some interviews that are very IoT centric from the Builders Fair. So do check that out. If you don't get to see it live, it'll be on YouTube afterwards, so you can see some of those weird IoT things. But the Twin Maker one, which I haven't sent them the interview for yet, didn't go well. They've got.
I didn't even know that. So have I preempted that?
Yeah. They had a sort of mini water pump set up, like an actual physical. Well, I think the IoT Twin Maker, they were talking. It's designed for managing remote complexity at the edge,
right?
But having an example, a virtual model of it that you can see happening and you can map behaviors.
Test new behaviors without having to
go to the thing. So they had a water pump set up and they had the virtualization of it. And so they explained that, well, this can take existing models, existing drawings, can take behaviors, measure it, get all the data, and then it just generates this model.
Right.
So, and they had the two running simultaneously. So then they turned on these two pumps that fed from one side to the other. And then they said, now we'll simulate a leak and then it actually leaked and water went everywhere. So I've got that on camera. So that'll be, and the model on the screen didn't react at all. It was just like, everything's fine. So not a good demo. Not a good demo. But IoT Twin Maker is in preview. So it's not a product yet.
Hang on. If the model was already simulating a leak, surely it wouldn't have complained because there was an actual link.
There was an actual.
There was an actual. Okay, so they were accurate.
No, it said there was no leak.
Oh, I see.
And you could see the water leaking all over the floor.
I want to watch that video. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So that didn't go well.
Twin Maker.
But I thought it was I thought it was a cool concept.
Yeah.
It is new. It's a preview. You can go use it for free now, and they're trying to improve it until you end up having to pay for it. So that was pretty cool. And then the last thing I think I wrote down was, I did like the Florence Nightingale analogy of being data-driven nursing. She was like, did you see that?
I didn't see that.
So I'm blanking. Adam Zlitsky, is that the CEO?
Yeah.
Am I saying his last name right?
I think so.
Andy Jassy was so much easier to say. So
We like your name, Andy Jesse.
Yeah. He did this analogy throughout that Florence Nightingale basically changed the face of nursing by going and seeing that and drawing the conclusion that hygiene was connected to death, which sounds obvious now,
but wasn't then.
Wasn't amazingly sort of just turn of the century kind of thing. So she did all the analysis of who died when and who had cleaned, blah, blah, blah. And decided, well, if we just clean these people
if we just clean them more.
And it was like, reduce the death rate by 90%, like right away. And then went on to just use data-driven nursing techniques, like pioneered that. And I was like, that's really good. So it was an interesting analogy about how far we've come in terms of data-driven decision-making. So I'm going to credit whoever wrote that speechy thing. If that's his brainchild, that was awesome.
Cool.
One other thing which I think is going to put companies to work for out of business is AWS fleet-wise. Now this is, I think probably some people are like, what? They're talking about how a modern, say like a Tesla, generates 2 terabytes an hour of data.
I can believe that.
And so they've set up a service that you can process vehicle data at scale and will generate diagnostic health across an entire fleet to handle that level of data consumptions. So that's bonkers.
There is a startup literally doing that right now that if it's the same one I'm thinking of, you plug like a little 3G ODB2. I do a bit of car hacking, like IoT stuff. So you plug an ODB like connector into the diagnostic port of your car and you just leave it there and it reads all the data out of the ECUs in your vehicle and sends them off to this company, and they do predictive maintenance, and
they're out of business.
They are probably out of business.
Unless they're going to use this, which case...
Yeah, unless they just use their customer base and save money on their infrastructure costs. Yeah, very possibly.
Be. So one of the companies I used to work for was HBM, and they built sensors.
Right.
So they were the sensors that went in the cars.
Yeah.
So they actually created a system that did that. That took all the data from all the sensors, remote link, and they would return the.
Right.
So if you had a fleet of cars, you could see the behavior of all the cars and generate data on it. So that was a feature, but that was in 2012.
Right.
And the metadata in the sensors were much simpler.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see that that's now an AWS service for far more complicated vehicle, much more complicated.
I'd be interested what again, a thing that requires Amazon to get more and more into consumer hardware. There has to be a thing that sends the data and understands the vehicle and interfaces with the vehicle. Like, there's just so much stuff where the cloud is like the intelligence, but they've realized the value in giving people things to connect that cloud to a physical location. Like, we're seeing quite a theme of that. You said there's a theme in enterprise. I think there's a theme in like hardware, cloud connected hardware seems to be Amazon's like, new baby happy thing at the moment.
Yeah, unpredictable move.
Right.
And the last thing they mentioned, which I actually thought you might have more feedback on than me, I'm assuming you're more serverless-y. I remember the first interview we did with those guys on the opening night where they said all things serverless. We were in the queue, right?
Yeah.
One thing they announced was on-demand serverless analytics.
Right.
For huge, complex burst serverless. So that, like, the example he said was ticket sales.
Right.
Where they go blah, 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 blah,
and then gone.
And it's gone. Is that they've improved whatever analytics were existing around, so you just can instantly see. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I just saw it and thought, I bet serverless people are going to like this.
I did not see that announcement.
So
I'm going to have to go and look at that. Should we look at it now? I tell you what, while you're finding that,
Redshift, EMR, Kinesis, these are all things that now have these on-demand analytics, like in a dashboard. It just shows you.
So maybe instead of like having to wait for like historical data of this is what did run, you can see it like
it's more real time.
Right.
And it's just there. So that to me sounded pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool.
I don't do anything that needs it.
There's a VPC announcement.
Oh,
there is a product related to VPC. There is now an Amazon service that will manage IP address management. There's like an IPAM API, so you don't need to do spreadsheets to manage all the IP addresses within your VPC. You can allocate via this IP address management API and track what's using what and that kind of stuff. And I only know that because a friend of mine at Amazon was part of that product design. So
cool.
shout out to VPC IPAM. Congrats. I'm sure it's caused someone a pain in the ass somewhere enough times that they needed a product to do that. So, like you said, data-driven nursing.
There you go. That's exactly. Pardon me. So that's all I've seen in terms of new announcements. I know there's a whole load on, but when you're here, I think the difference between actually being here and being remote last time is that I was actually a little bit more in tune with because you're watching virtually and you read the blogs and you're not walking like the chaos of Vegas and reInvent. When you're here, it means if you didn't see it, I'm probably catching 20% of the exciting things that we could be talking about now.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I completely agree. I think you get things here that you don't get at home. So, for example, I'm having better individual conversations about Chekhov, and I'll get into that in a moment. Like customers, Chekhov, like I'm having deeper conversations with people at Amazon that I want to deep dive with something, or I want to have, that kind of stuff. But for every one of those conversations you have, it's not really conference. It's just the fact that you have access to those people here, so you take advantage. But for every one of those conversations you have, you miss going to a session, or you miss reading a blog post that you would have read already if you were sat at home watching the sessions. So yeah, I think being here gives you access to more intimate conversations, but ironically, being at home probably gives you more of the content that the conference is meant to be about.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? So I realize we're almost at the end of the hour, and we can babble all night on this. Something I wanted to bring up, which we hadn't talked about yet, and it maybe is would you just cut? End of the can is a bad. Whoa, watch your microphone. Are we back? Beer timeout. So when I get to the end of the can, do not last bit.
It's definitely unpasteurized and unfiltered. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, it's a microphone.
Rookie move.
Rookie mistake. So the last thing I wanted to mention was the troubles we had. We are here. Was how many people bought flights and like that with that bit of mayhem that happened about, I think it was the 18th of November, when suddenly it was sold out.
Right.
And some of us, like some of the people we work with, didn't get tickets to come here, even though they'd all flights and hotels.
Yeah, they were here. They just weren't here.
And I have friends at other companies who booked it, and they were like, well, we're going to come. So, but that was a strange dynamic. And last time, so you've done it once.
Yeah.
Like, does that happen where they just close the door without telling anybody?
I don't think Amazon managed that very well. There almost needed to be like a fullness indicator, didn't there? Like they clearly have a capacity. They clearly know how many people they can legally have in these rooms and these buildings and all that insane management and planning that goes into putting something like this on. They know people will come. They know they were going to sell out, but yeah, like it did feel like they've probably let down quite a lot of their loyal customer base in that single mistake. Yeah,
it was weird. So, and then the other problem that we had was we bought our tickets. We bought tickets, and then there was some really great articles that came out. I want to say Tom Calloway, I think is his name, who is an open source advocate for AWS, said these are the sessions, the must-go-to sessions that came out a week before we got here.
Right.
But you couldn't sign up for any of them because they were allocating seating.
They were all full.
They're all full. So on day one, I had this list of things I thought I could go see, and I went to one of the ones that was full, and then I found out that they had walk-up spots.
Right.
So you could.
But nothing on the booking system said, hey, it's still worth trying to walk up to this session. It just said, don't even bother. Like, to your point of like, where do I plan? Where am I walking? Because otherwise you spend all day walking back and forth.
Yeah.
There was nothing on the app to suggest, oh, well, there's no point even walking to that room because it's full. You're done. And
that's how I felt.
I went through all the 400 series expert deep dive sessions for the entire week.
Yeah.
And I think 4 of them maybe had space a week before reInvent opened. Like, you could reserve a space on 4 out of the 100, 200 sessions that were there. And it's like, you know, if we're gonna, we've given a lot of good for the conference, but if we're gonna give the bad with the good, you know, I've just paid $1,800 for that ticket. I kind of want to go to the expert sessions. Yeah,
that was it. The queue. So I did the walk up for the EKS one because when I worked out you could do it.
Right.
I knew that if you got there 45 minutes ahead of time and got to the front of the walk-in, you would almost always get in.
But ironically, you're then spending 45 minutes queuing
for a 45-minute session
rather than doing something else with the very expensive conference pass you just bought. It's not a good.
That's essentially what happened.
I personally think if you have a conference pass, you and we tried to enable this for a conference I was in charge of running at a previous employer.
Okay.
And we were going to debut it the first time when COVID happened and we never got to. But our conference app, if you were a full paid up conference attendee, every single session would be streamed live because they've already got the AV equipment at the back to record.
Yeah.
Every session was streamed live onto the app. So if you were at the other side of Caesars or you were at the other side of Vegas, or if you were queuing to be in a session because you want to speak to the speaker afterwards, you could still watch another session from somewhere else. And I still don't think people would be like, oh, well, what's the point in coming? Because you still want those interactions with people. You still want to be here. I just think that would I feel like you'd feel like you're wasting less time for a very expensive conference pass.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, given how often they do it, it's always here.
Right.
So they kind of should have worked that. Anyway, that was the one bad thing essentially, was how much time I've spent waiting to get into sessions.
Amen.
Once I worked out how I could get in.
I've got a fun closing topic.
Okay.
What is the one Amazon service that you wish they had announced, but they still have not?
Well,
putting you on the spot there.
The Amazon simple beer service. That was the one.
I mean, we actually saw a demo of that yesterday.
Yeah.
By the way, so a lot of the demos, again, go and check out AWS ComSum, COMSUM on YouTube. We have so much content that we're recording here for ComSum. The amazing guys are putting it together really nicely. It's excellently produced content. If you want more like behind the scenes interviews of some of the stuff that you won't see in announcements and things like that, like you want a feel of the atmosphere of the conference, definitely check out those videos trickling through. There's a live session tomorrow with a load of AWS heroes from the UK talking about what excites them about AWS and the announcements here. It's so good. Go check it out.
Did you have a service that you want to exist? Is that what
okay,
what is it?
Yeah, they do have a service that I want to exist. I want them to make Event Engine a buyable service. So for those that don't know, Event Engine is what all the Amazon SEs use to basically allow them to spin up effectively ephemeral AWS accounts for workshops and demos. If you've ever gone and done any of the self-paced labs in an AWS conference where you go and you register and you just sit down at one of 1,000 machines and they have instructions and they provision you an AWS account and you can go and try things out for yourself and follow the guided instructions. That's all powered by Event Engine. Event Engine is managing spinning up an AWS account, restricting what you can do on that account if necessary for certain workshops so you don't go and do crypto mining for an hour. Dealing with all the centralized billing back to whoever's paying for those instances for that workshop, and giving you an API and then giving you a role, like a Cognito IAM role to log in and taking your email address and making sure you validated your email address so that they know who that account was being used by or abused by, and then shutting it all down afterwards and cleaning it all up. And we use this, thanks very, very much to our partner and SE team, that have been working with us on Bridge Crew. If you've seen any of our hands-on 2-hour workshops online, AWS always joins us on those workshops and provides us with this facility, provides us with this event engine solution. I would pay dollars on top of each instance to be able to provision that myself for like a meetup or an ad hoc workshop or anything like that. And it already exists. I just want someone to productize it.
Oh, that's very cool. That's a good request.
Yeah.
Are you watching?
Amazon, if you're listening, I'm coming and finding the people that have Event Engine because I want it as a product.
Good request.
Thanks.
So I think we're almost at the end of the hour. I think we should wrap up. One thing I'd like to comment, a real positive, huge positive about this event is in spite of us talking about them closing the doors and causing all this disruption, it is sold out.
Right.
But it's not that crazy populated. And everyone's being, except for us right now, really good about wearing masks and sanitization. And
we are in a private room with no one else and about 1,000 square feet of air conditioning and everyone else, the whole conference
is all masked up. Everyone's being really good about it.
And in fact, if you're not being good about it, people will tell you. They are actively enforcing it. Security is really free flowing, but they're doing like bag checks. They're enforcing masks, sanitization stations everywhere. Like, yeah, really good.
I just realized I just coughed. I have a sinus infection. I've had 1,000 tests over the past like 2 weeks, including ones to get here. Anyway, really good, really good. That was my kind of closing positive.
Yeah, very positive. And overall, great experience. Like the atmosphere, the vibe. They could just do to work on how people waste less time with the big, moving around Vegas thing. And I think live streaming the sessions is the way to do that. But
pretty awesome. Shall we sign off?
Let's sign off. I've been Matt Johnson.
I'm still Steve Jaguar.
He is still Steve Jaguar. I am also still Matt Johnson.
Still Matt Johnson.
I'm not changing my name after this. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for hanging around. Sorry about the AV issues earlier. And we'll see you on the next one.
Okay.